Daily Trust News Center, this is the News Hour.
On News Hour tonight, organized labor holds nationwide fuel hike protest as protesters force their way into National Assembly. President Tinubu takes over negotiation with labor leaders, submits supplementary ministerial list to Senate. Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso and Guinea absent as West Africa defense chiefs meet in Abuja. And on the foreign scene, first planes carrying evacuees from Niger land in Paris and Rome. Hello and welcome to News Hour on Trust TV. I'm Darshan Hussaina Usman. Now the news in detail. Consistent with the position taken by leaders of the organized labor, the Nigeria Labour Congress on Wednesday staged a nationwide protest following failure of the federal government to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal. The protest, which started at the Unity Fountain in Abuja, moved on to the National Assembly complex, where the protesters pulled down one of the gates of the Assembly complex and forced their way into the premises to register their grievances. Trust TV's Shafi'u Suleiman reports that Senate promised to intervene in the seeming breakdown of negotiations between federal government and the unions.
A peaceful protest all through, and the message is simple. Reverse anti-people policies. Make refineries functional to end petrol import dependency. Nigerians must breathe in the face of suffocating economic atmosphere.
We want to make a case, that Nigerians can no longer breathe. That's the message we brought here, that we have been suffering. And the slave has nothing to lose than his chest. It has gotten to our neck, and we can't breathe again.
Two variables are not under our control. One, the exchange rate and the cost of crude oil at the international market, which means it's going to be a vicious cycle that it has been for the past 30 years. It has been a vicious cycle, and it will continue to be a vicious cycle, and it will continue to affect our economy. And therefore, government must come with three plans: immediate, medium, and long-term plan. I've not seen that on the table.
With their message of resilience and solidarity, the protesters march through like a tsunami, ready to dismantle any security blockade. They occupy the National Assembly complex, according to NLC National Secretary, gasping for breath in an environment with excess energy to reel out their demands.
We can't continue to run an import-driven petroleum system, energy system. It will depend on what they call the vagaries of the market. If the dollar goes for 1,000 naira per dollar, they will import at that rate and increase it and tell you it's market forces. Who is market forces? Nigerian workers want to know who is market forces.
We want you in National Assembly to show sacrifice. We want you in National Assembly to cut down your budget. We want you in National Assembly to go and buy Innosi motors. We don't want you to go and buy Toyota, to go and buy imported vehicles, because you are creating jobs over there and you are importing suffering here.
Some senators were at hand to give a listening ear, just as they share in the concerns over petrol subsidy removal. They, however, needed time to properly intervene.
I beg you in the name of God, let us take what we are doing serious. Let us know that God is watching us. Let us not come here to only wave flags and then sing songs and go back. Let us solve the problem that is in this country. As I come to speak to you, I swear to God, I speak because I know what I went through to escape poverty.
The organized labor has made its demands clear, straightforward and explicit to the National Assembly leadership. They have a 6-point demand, among which they said the federal government should reverse all its considered anti-people policies as a way forward. They also talked about the need to resuscitate and make operational the nation's 4 refineries as alternative to subsidy removal. From the lobby of the National Assembly here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News.
Labour union leaders in Katsina joined the nationwide protest against what they called harsh government policies and increase in the cost of living because of fuel subsidy removal. The Nigerian Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress argue that the government failed to put measures in place to cushion the harsh effects of this policy on the citizens. Jamil Mabai has more.
The protesters chanting solidarity songs are also demanding a salary increase. They argue that the removal of fuel subsidies has eroded their purchasing power, making it difficult to meet their basic needs. They believe that an increase in wages is necessary to cope with the rising cost of living.
We all voted for those in the authority.
Yes.
Is that so?
Yes.
And equally, they're supposed to represent us very well. Any policy that can bring hardship to an ordinary citizen, I think the government need consult before implementing it. NSC, TUC unanimously agreed that, okay, if government wanted to remove fuel subsidy, there is no cause for alarm, but at least measures should be taken to cushion the effect of the removal of the fuel subsidy before removal. And the government refused to do that.
They said it is time for the government to act in the best interest of the people.
For we to accept, government should respect that agreement that has been signed by the 3 parties, the government, the TUC and the NSC. The immediate reversal of all anti-fuel policies of government, including the recent hike in PMS, school fees and the VAT, and you are still living in a minimum wage of 30,000. And they have implemented or they have approved the review of their salary, the political office holders, leaving you workers with 30,000 minimum.
In addition to these demands, the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress are urging the government to cut political spending. They said that excessive spending on political campaigns and projects is draining the country's resources, leaving little for essential services and infrastructure development.
We are also aware 70 billion naira has been approved for just purchase of vehicles for our elected members. The elected members we elected by ourselves. And they kept quiet. They kept quiet to these bad policies of the government.
The protesters vowed to take strict measures if government failed to meet their demands. Jamilu Mubay, Trust TV, Katsina.
Similarly, leaders of the organized labor comprising Nigeria Labour Congress and its Trade Union Congress counterpart in Kano have called on the federal government to, as a matter of respect, fulfill the agreement and promises earlier reached with regards to palliatives and other resolutions for Nigerians. NLC chairman in Kano, Kabiru Inuwa, made the call when he led a peaceful protest against fuel price hike and other policies of the federal government on Wednesday. No fewer than 20 different unions have converged at the Murtala Muhammad Library Complex and marched in a procession through Ahmadu Bello Way for about 15 minutes to the State Government House. They were received by the Secretary to the State Government, Abdullahi Baffa Bichi, and the Chief of Staff to the Governor, Shehu Wada Sagagi, whom represented the Governor, Abba Kabir Yusuf. The two government officials have tried to stop the peaceful protest halfway to have a talk, but the aggrieved citizens defied granting listening ears and went ahead with the movement. Speaking, the NLC chairman, Kabiru Inua, said the central point of the protest is to at least request the government to fulfill the promises it made during the first sitting they have had with Labour and resolve to put committees and commence work immediately. Kano State Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf, who was represented by the Secretary to the State Government, Abdullahi Baffa Bichi, assured the aggrieved citizens that the government is strategizing to bring out effective models and plans to begin distribution of palliatives. He also promised to transmit the message to the federal government for onward consideration. The Lagos State chapter of the Nigeria Labour Congress has demanded a 30,000 naira subsidy palliative apart from its initial call for the increment of the minimum wage. The union made the demand on Wednesday when it joined its counterparts in the country to protest against what they described as anti-people policies implemented by the government. Take a look.
The chairperson, NLC Lagos, Fumi Sesi, asked the government to increase minimum wage and provide subsidy palliatives of 30,000 naira for the next 6 months. She thereafter presented a letter signed by the organized labour to the Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Obafemi Hamzat, who received it on behalf of the government.
As in Lagos, our life should also depict city people. So, aside from the increase in the minimum wage that our national bodies are asking and demanding from the federal government, we are also asking that before that wrap-up of the minimum wage, we are asking for subsidy palliatives.
Immediately, democracy is under threat in West Africa. Let us consolidate our own democracy by taking care of the masses. Do you understand me? Let the masses breathe.
You read the letter and then you will hear from your leadership. I want to thank you because this is a peaceful protest. Like we said, in a democracy, it is fundamental.
In Oyo State, civil and public servants have vowed to continue with their protest, no matter how long it takes to have the governor, Seyi Makinde, speak with them in person. NLC chairman in the state, Kayode Martin, stated this while addressing newsmen during a protest by the organized labour to get government's attention to roll out palliatives to state workers and citizens. The workers had, since the commencement of the protest on Monday, been blocking the main entrance gate to the government secretariat, with official activities paralysed. The NLC chairman said although the governor has set up a committee on subsidy removal palliatives 8 weeks ago, the committee had not met since then on the assignment. Similarly, the organised labour in Ogun State on Wednesday joined their counterparts across the country to protest in Abeokuta, the state capital. Members of Nigerian Labour Congress NLC, Trade Union Congress TUC, and Joint Negotiating Council JNC and other affiliate unions participated and were armed with placards with various anti-government inscriptions to press home their demands. Elsewhere in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital, workers joined the organised labour nationwide protest in the country in protest against the effective removal of fuel subsidy by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The protest commenced at the State Secretariat of the Nigerian Labour Congress, joined by members of the Trade Union Congress members and other civil organisations. Monitored and accompanied by a large number of security operatives led by the Commissioner of Police, Eboluwarotimi Adelesi, the procession passed through Ahmadu Bello Way and ended at Government House. The leaders of NLC and TUC lamented the hardship being faced as a result of the fuel subsidy removal and called for immediate reversal of the removal of subsidy.
In the same vein, the Kaduna State chapter of the Nigeria Labour Congress and other affiliations on Wednesday joined the nationwide protest organized by the national body of the union to protest the hardship workers and Nigerians are facing after the removal of fuel subsidy. Hundreds of members of the union participated in the street protest from the state secretariat of the union to Ahmadu Bello Stadium. Trust TV's Bello Musa has more.
They started the street protest chanting solidarity songs with only NLC members participating. After the protest, they converged on Ahmadu Bello Stadium, Kaduna, for the chairman's address. The chairman, Kaduna State Chapter of the NLC, Ayuba Suleiman, while addressing the workers, said the struggle is against some anti-people policy of the government.
That was rested on our shoulders without any tangible plan. We are not ready for this. Are we ready for it? No! Are we ready for it? No! Is that what we voted? No! We voted for democracy. We voted for good standard of living. And we voted for equity and justice. This decision that was made on the podium is causing a lot of hardship.
Some of the workers speak on the present economic realities.
At least about 60 days when the president pronounced the removal of subsidy, and we expect that immediately after that pronouncement there should be proper arrangement in terms of palliatives so as to cushion the effect of this subsidy removal to the general public, especially the working class.
It has been very difficult, really difficult, because if a civil servant is collecting 100,000, instead of him to use it for some things, maybe to feed his family and all that, he's using it for transport, and he has to be at work. If he doesn't go to work, there will be problems. So he spends like 70% of what he earns, on transportation.
Well, since it's a nationwide protest, absolutely it's going to be impact for the government to see that, yes, we are ready and we are on course.
Though residents did not partake in the protest as envisaged by the NLC in Kaduna, residents, however, said they are in solidarity with the unions as they are all part of those feeling the pains of removing subsidy.
It's not easy. It has caused pain. There is no money. People are suffering. Let Mr. President at least consider the masses. At least reduce it to 300 and something naira.
May everything come down. People are suffering now. For you to suffer 400 naira, 300 naira. Somebody's doing a government worker. How much is salary? Five children. How many children? The money is okay. It's not okay for them.
The peaceful protest was done amidst heavy security as security operatives were stationed at strategic locations to avoid breakdown of law and order. Banks were also shut in the Kaduna metropolis during the protest, but opened later. Bello Musa, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
Earlier, we spoke to Head of Information and Public Affairs to the Nigeria Labour Congress, Benson Ukpa, on the nationwide protest.
Labour has done is that it took on its shoulders the agitations by individuals, disparate groups across the country, and marshal this into a document of demand. This is what Labour has done. So this should be of significance to the government. Government has this way of gathering information, obtaining information. Okay. And the information available to the administration, I have no doubt, underscores the enormity of this problem. So we are looking forward to a situation whereby government will take seriously today's peaceful protest. However, in the event that government refuses to see reason, there are other options available to organize labor within the ambit of the law. And a full strike action is available to the labor. It can shut down the country completely. It has done so before. That he refused to do so this time should encourage a government to go further in its commitment to the welfare of the people. In issuing the restraining order, contemplation was not had or was not intended that there will be another increase, okay? So, and in any case, a restraining order, to the best of my knowledge, is not a perpetual injunction, okay? But come to look at it, there is a difference between a protest action and a strike. A protest action, a peaceful protest action like the one that we have executed, is within our right as enshrined in the 1999 Constitution, as amended, as equally enshrined in the African Charter on Fundamental Rights. It is enshrined in the corpus of labor laws, okay? So, and this right cannot be abridged by the Solicitor General, okay? So, she acted beyond her brief, except she has been procured by forces beyond the rule of law and justice.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we also have Marshal Abubakar, a human rights lawyer, joining us via Zoom to give his perspectives on the legality of the nationwide protest. Good evening, Marshal, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. It's quite a pleasure to be here with you today. Good evening.
All right, it's good to have you here. Now, there have been arguments and counter-arguments on the legality or otherwise of the organized labor's protest. Now, what is your legal perspective on the protest?
Well, this is quite simple, and this has been laid to rest. Protests is a fundamental right of Nigerian workers. The right to embark on peaceful protest is one that is enshrined in the Constitution. It is well recognized by the African Charter of Human and People's Rights, Section 39 of the Nigerian Constitution, as the freedom of expression. It's also one that's recognized by Section 40 as the right to freedom of movement. So the protest, peaceful protest embarked upon by organized laborers and the CSOs today, it is one that is backed by law, the grandam of Nigeria. Nigerian workers and Nigerians indeed have a right to protest. Protest, like we've always insisted, is a fundamental human right of Nigerians. And the right to protest cannot be abrogated by any court of law, by any institution, or by any agency of government in any manner whatsoever. Unless if the Constitution itself, which is the ground that donates this right, would be amended by the drafters of the same Constitution. Any law, any enactment, any pronouncement that seeks or attempts to take away this right is unlawful, null and void to the extent of its Constitution, or to the extent of its inconsistency. No judge, I repeat, no judge, either of the National Industrial Court or the Federal High Court or any other courts in the land can abrogate the rights of Nigerian workers or indeed any person in Nigeria to embark on peaceful.
All right.
And the Court of Appeal has upheld these particular provisions and this particular rights. In the case of IGP against ANPP, where it was unequivocally held that the rights of Nigerians to embark on peaceful protest by carrying placards to register dissent against unpopular government policies is a right that's recognized by our Constitution.
All
so
right,
no
Marshal.
authority or person can abrogate this right or can take this right away. And it must also be reinstated and re-emphasized that this right has also been recognized even before the coming into effect of the Nigerian Constitution. And by the case of Ebuta versus FRN, in the case of versus versus states, in the case of Okonkwo versus state, where the court has admonished Nigerians
All right, Marshal.
after striking and certain portions of the criminal code not to relent or
If
hand
you can hear
over
me, Marshal.
their right to peaceful protest, which they've won, or the right to expression, which they've won from the colonial era.
All right, Marshal.
So, the labor were in order today by embarking on that strike. I also took part in that strike by embarking on that protest.
Marshal, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
All right, thank you for that interesting take. Now, in addition to that, now we all know that the disputes between the labor unions and the government is actually still pending in court, on the same subject matter. Now, do you foresee an amicable resolution of this particular dispute?
Yes, we do. And I think it's in the best interest of all parties. As we speak now, I learned that the president of the TUC and that of the NLC are meeting with the president at the Aso Villa. I think it's in the best interest of this government to listen to Nigerians who have spoken loud and clear by the very successful protests, peaceful protests across the country today, where they have come unequivocally and the government has no right to disregard the demands and yearnings of Nigerian people. The Nigerian people have spoken in unison, and we have demanded from the government that certain things must be done before the subsidy issue can be addressed or removed. We must have functional refineries. There are certain demands that have been made of the government. So we think it's in the best interest of all parties to ensure that this matter is, as soon as possible, resolved amicably, so we can have industrial harmony, we can have peace in our society. On the issue of court, the matter in court, there is no order restraining labor from embarking on peaceful protests.
All right,
we represented labor in that particular case.
Marshall, if you can hear me. Yes, if you can hear me, earlier we spoke to the head of information and public affairs of the NLC, and he said they actually have, other options on ground. They actually threatened a strike action should the government not heed their demands and come to a consensus. Now, looking at the impact of a strike action on the economy, what would you advise?
I would advise the government to do the needful quite quickly, so that this matter can be resolved. The right to embark on strike is also a right to Nigerian workers. The Trade Union Act of 2005 gives to the Nigerian workers the right to embark on strike. And this right has been recognized by several judgments of the court. As a matter of fact, this right to strike is also driven from the crown of the Constitution. So the workers are in the rights if they insist on embarking on strike, if their demands are not being met by the government. It is their right to embark on strike. The ILO Convention, Section 89, ILO Convention 89, ILO Convention 90, 87, clearly recognizes the right of Nigerian workers or any worker anywhere in the world to embark on strike.
Well, all right, Marshall, sadly, time is not on our side, but thank you so much for your contribution on this issue. We really, really appreciate your take on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so that was Marshall Abubakar, a human rights lawyer who joins us via Zoom to give his perspectives on the legality of the labor union's protests. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu met with President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, and President General of the Trade Union Congress after Wednesday's nationwide protest. Now, the labor leaders said the president made some commitments in response to the demands of organized labor, but there is no indication yet that the protests will be suspended. Kende Amodu reports.
If the intention was to get the full attention of the president, Wednesday's protests certainly did. Leaders of the labor unions were back at the presidential villa a few hours after the protests, and unlike the last few meetings, they were negotiating directly with President Tinubu. Their demands have not changed.
The issues are the same issues that led to the protest today, and he has expressed his position, made some commitment, which are taken side by side with what the National Assembly said, the Senate said, and we're taking it back to the office with our colleagues there to review it and release a document on our next line of action. No one person can call it off. That's why I say we have to go back to the office so that they will look at it, the ESCO looks at it before they come up. And by tomorrow, the NSC will have equally their next meeting, to look at a bigger picture.
And despite the fact that the president has not shifted ground either, it seems he's ready to make some concessions. Labour is going back to its constituency to consult and decide whether these protests will still go ahead. Nigerians wait with bated breath to see what direction this struggle of wills will go next. From State House Abuja, Kehinde Amudu, Trust TV News.
Thank you, Kehinde, for that report. Now, moving on, Senate President Godswill Akpabio on Wednesday unveiled 19 more ministerial nominees submitted by President Bola Tinubu. Former Governors Boyega Oyetola of Osun, Simon Lalong of Plateau, Abubakar Bagudu of Kebbi and Bello Matawale of Zamfara were announced by the Senate President. Others are Abdullahi Gwarzo from Kano, Zafanaya Jisalo, FCT, Aliyu Abdullahi, Niger, Alkali Saidu, Gombe, Hanikin Lokbobori, Bayelsa, and Ibrahim Gaidam, Yobe. Also appointed are Bosun Tijani, Mariam Shetty, Ishaq Salako, Tunji Alausa, Yusuf Sununu, Lola John, Shuaibu Audu, Tahir Mamman, and Megari Amadou. Akpabio, who presided over the ongoing ministerial screening, read the names of the new batch of ministerial nominees at plenary on Wednesday. Earlier, the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, submitted the supplementary ministerial list to the Senate. Already, the Senate has screened the 28 nominees in the first batch, and Gbajabiamila had last Thursday submitted the first list with 28 nominees to the Red Chamber and said more names would be forwarded to the Upper Chamber. One of President Bola Tinubu's ministerial nominees, Dele Alake, has raised serious concerns over the misapplication of social media in Nigeria. Alake bitterly complained about the misuse of the platform while fielding questions from senators during his screening exercise on Wednesday in Abuja. The report.
While acknowledging its advantages in information dissemination, Alake warned that the disadvantages of social media could throw the country into confusion if not checked. According to him, the bad side of social media can be detrimental to any good and decent society. He therefore called on the legislative arm of government to amend its existing laws to regulate social media in order to curb fake and inaccurate information.
To every privilege, there are responsibilities. I am not advocating an absolute press freedom without responsibilities. And I had a cause to say to some group of media men just a few days back that those of us who are gatekeepers, editors, managing directors and all that, the gatekeepers have an onus on them. It behoves on them to regulate whatever comes out for the sanity of our society, because information is power. When information is irresponsibly purveyed, it can lead to cataclysmic events and destruction, chaos, social anomie in the society.
Another ministerial nominee from Kwara State, Lateef Fagbemi, a senior advocate of Nigeria, while responding to the question on whether or not he will have a relationship with the National Assembly if appointed as the Attorney General of the Federation, said he cannot do anything without the permission of the National Assembly. He also said it is not the government that disobeys court orders, but the people around the government.
With respect on the issue of not obeying court orders, there is no government, especially the head, who will want to joke with the judiciary. It is those around him. In Nigeria, what we have, or which we have to pay attention to, is interagency rivalry. You have the EFCC, you have the SSS, you have other security, organizations. I think, with respect, you will not find the president flouting any order, because the Attorney General will invariably be made a party.
On boundary disputes, Fagbemi said it is not a legal matter, but a political one. Those strained today were Dele Alake from Ekiti, Lateef Fagbemi, Kwara, Mohammed Idris, Niger, Ali Pate, Bauchi, and Doris Uzoka from Imo State. Rashidat Yusuf for Trust TV News.
Mali, Niger Republic, Burkina Faso and Guinea were absent at the ECOWAS Defense Chiefs meeting held in Abuja. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, is leading the meeting of Chiefs of Defense Staff from 15 ECOWAS countries at Defense Headquarters, Abuja, today. The military leaders are discussing the political situation in the Niger Republic. Conspicuously absent are the defense chiefs from Niger, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, and Guinea-Bissau, a development indicating the country's opposition to ECOWAS stance on the Niger Republic. The Committee of Defense Chiefs will deliberate on the political crisis and work towards a resolution within the 7-day ultimatum issued by the ECOWAS leadership last Sunday. The outcome could either stabilize Niger or escalate tensions in the region. Countries present at the meeting include Nigeria, Benin Republic, Ghana, Togo, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Gambia, Cote d'Ivoire also, Cabo Verde, and Senegal. ECOWAS had on Sunday, during an extraordinary summit of the Authority of Heads of State and Government, chaired by Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu, issued a 7-day ultimatum to the military junta in Niger to revert to status quo or risk consequences, including a possible military action. You're watching News Hour on Trust TV. Coming up after the break. How 155% school fees hike generates ripples. Stay with us. Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching News on Trust TV. A recap of our top stories. We told you that organized labor holds nationwide fuel hike protests as protesters force their way into National Assembly. We also told you that President Tinubu takes over negotiation with labor leaders, submit supplementary ministerial list to Senate. Moving on, the United Kingdom says it is ready to work even more closely with Nigeria on important issues of defense and security of trade and investment. Visiting UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly revealed this on Wednesday after meeting with President Bola Tinubu at State House, Abuja. Cleverly said his country strongly supported the wide range of sanctions announced by the ECOWAS following the ousting of President Mohamed Bazoum by a military junta in the Niger Republic. Kende Amadou has the report.
Despite the country being up in protests outside the presidential villa, the business of government continues with President Bola Tinubu meeting with UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly. The president is direct in his request for stronger bilateral relations, describing the UK as a partner country for the future. Perhaps in reference to the protests led by Labour against fuel price increases and general economic hardship, the UK is throwing its support behind what it calls the important reform programs that President Tinubu has introduced.
And we committed to work even more closely still on important issues of defence and security, of trade and investment, and we committed to ensuring the UK and Nigeria meet regularly and formally at ministerial level and senior official level to ensure that the good, strong foundation stone upon which the bilateral relationship is built is enhanced even further.
The UK Foreign Secretary also touched on the situation in Niger, commending the stance of ECOWAS and President Tinubu's decisive actions, which demonstrate his strong commitment to democracy.
We touched briefly on the situation in Niger. I made the point that the UK very much welcomes ECOWAS's and his indeed decisive action, his strong commitment to democracy, and the unambiguous message that violence is not the means to bring political change in any circumstance.
The UK Foreign Secretary is inviting a delegation from Nigeria to next year's UK Africa Investment Summit, and is particular about Afrobeats, which he says has become one of Nigeria's dominant cultural exports. Cleverly is on a 4-day African visit and is prioritizing future-focused, mutual beneficial partnerships. He's scheduled to spend 2 days in Nigeria. From State House, Abuja, Kehinde Amodu, Trust TV News.
The Borno State NLC chapter has described subsidy withdrawal as a suicidal policy by the federal government. The NLC and other trade union bodies are demanding the reversal of fuel price, increase of salaries and minimum wage, and most especially an end to anti-people policies. The planned protest could not extend to other parts of the capital because the Nigerian police barricaded the labor union. Beatrice Kuruti has more on this.
Nigerian workers in Borno State entering the Labour Secretariat for the solidarity protest against the federal government's removal of fuel subsidy and the attendant economic hardships in the country. From the Labour
the struggle continue. Victory. Today is our day that we are asked nationwide to come out and protest against the bad policies against the poor man of Nigeria and Nigerian workers.
We are demanding for 190 per litre so that we can take our children to school, so that all of us will go to work in a more dignified way. Now, this issue of subsidy removal is a suicide. So we are appealing to the government of the day to allow the masses breathe.
Secretariat, they marched to the streets of Maiduguri. The protesters were blocked at the NUJ Center by the Nigerian police. It was later revealed that the barricade was in line with an agreement with the union and the police that the protests will not be extended beyond the capital for fear of possible unrest.
A policy that is very bad and is not implementable and is not acceptable to Nigerians and workers in general. This is one of the demands. And there are policies like increase in VAT, increase in school tuition fee, that is especially federal government colleges, secondary school, where our children go to school. People are paying 40,000 naira per annum. They have increased, suddenly they increased the tuition fee to 100,000 naira. 100,000, of which is not even affordable to us as workers in Nigeria. Therefore, we are saying no to this policy and its anti-workers, anti-masses policy.
The protesters, who are hopeful that the federal government will yield to their demands, are waiting to see if any action will be taken.
Still on NLC protests, the Plateau State chapter of the Nigeria Labour Congress on Wednesday complied with the directive of its national leadership to protest against the current economic hardship in the country. Members of the union who gathered in their numbers at the entrance of Federal Secretariat in the state criticized some economic policies of President Bola Tinubu while urging him to reverse them to enable the common man enjoy the dividends of democracy in the country. Ado Musa completes the report.
The protest was held amid tight security from officers of the Nigerian Police Force. The protest, which had in attendance union leaders including Chairman of Trade Union Congress, TUC, and Academic Staff Union of Nigerian Universities, ASU, was led by the NLC chairman in the state, Eugene Manji. The workers marched from the federal secretariat and later moved to the state secretariat for their addresses.
We are against anti-poor policies that will impoverish us the more, and it will be creating insecurity unnecessarily. So the government should have a rethink, and that's why protesting, calling them, compelling them to listen to the plight of Nigerians and then look at it. Today, as we are on strike, whether they like it or not, the federal government will be losing billions of naira per day.
It appears the person that is the regulator here is the government, and they have faces, and they are trying. We elected them to lead us, but they are about to lead us to our graves, and we will not take it. Nigerian workers will not take it. Chairman, today it is peaceful, but unless they fix our refineries, unless they go back and keep to the resolutions between our leaders and the federal government.
The demands based on government are not sincere with the demands of and whatever Labour is presenting to the government. This rally or this protest must go ahead, because it's not just the workers. The demands presented was a very holistic decision. It included both traders, farmers, villagers, and in short, every Nigerian.
After making their individual addresses, the State Commissioner of Police, Bartholomew Onyeka, called on the protesters to conduct themselves lawfully.
I and my men will live here and will earn our living in Plateau State. So we are therefore committed to the peace on the Plateau. That's one of the reasons why you've seen me out. When some people were in their comfort homes now, still either sleeping or doing one thing or the other. But I felt it is necessary. I'm here with you to see things for myself. This will not be an additional problem to the people of Plateau. I am happy the way you've comported yourself. I'm happy the way you've carried yourselves. I am happy the way everything is going on. That's why I felt that I cannot just go around today without coming to stay with you and share with you.
The workers, who described the protest as a peaceful one, however, called on President Tinubu to review some of his policies, which they describe as anti-people, to ensure human and capital development in the country. Adom Musa, Trust TV News, Jos.
Labour unions in Taraba State this Wednesday joined their counterparts in other parts of the country to protest against the removal of fuel subsidy, high cost of goods and services, as well as the provision of buffers that will ease the financial burden on Nigerians. The protesters, who marched along major streets in the metropolis, were received by the state governor, Abu Kaifas, at the government house. The report.
At the protest with the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC), the National Union of Local Government Employees (NULGE), National Union of Road Transport Workers, National Union of Teachers, and the Trade Union Congress (TUC), among other unions in the state. They carried placards with inscriptions such as "Stop Petroleum Importation," 70 billion for 306 senators, while 420 billion for the 220 million people in the country. No to 8,000 naira for the poor, revive our refineries, among others. They presented their grievances before the governor for prompt solutions. The state TUC chairman, Sule Albasu, and the chairman of NLC, Peter Jediel, frowned at some federal government policies, such as the appropriation of 70 billion naira for senators and 430 billion naira for the rest of Nigerians, adding that actions like that are inhumane.
We march to the government house to present our grievances on the current happenings in Nigeria, especially the petroleum motor spirit (PMS), because of the removal of the subsidy. So it's not only in Taraba; it is a nationwide issue that you see people, everybody, because we are tired of what is happening in the country, and it is on that basis we've decided to come on to show to the world that yes, what is happening in Nigeria, it is not a palatable something.
The increase of the breadfruit, where people are suffering everywhere in the nation. So that is why we call by the National Secretariat that all the labor leaders and the workers in the state to go around to mobilize their people to go for protests.
In his response, the state governor, Agbu Kefas, who called for cooperation from stakeholders in the state to enable government to tackle challenges facing the state, also enjoined all to exercise patience, with the federal government adding that in the near future, Nigerians will reap the benefits of the government's economic policies. Governor Kefas informed that he will liaise with union chairmen and marketers in order to work out modalities to execute his palliatives plan.
I said earlier, we are here to serve the people, not to oppress the people. You are right. There's no difference between us and you. It is from the same family, the same schools, the same thing that we got to where we are. So we're supposed to complement each other. And that is why we're here to make things right.
The protest was conducted under a peaceful atmosphere.
Moving on to education, students of the University of Jos are lamenting the over 155% increment in school fees by the management of the institution. The university management had on Saturday released a new school fee schedule for fresh and returning students, a development that many parents and students say is uncalled for. Adam Musa completes the report.
The approved new charges for the 2022 academic session indicates that fresh students will pay 213,000 naira, while returning students will pay 160,000 naira. Last session, both fresh and returning students pay 45,000 naira each. However, the students say the new charges are too high for parents considering the economic hardship in the country.
Because the increment is very high, in the sense that a lot of us cannot accommodate such. We interact within us, we know our capacity, and seriously, the way how the country is going, I don't think if most of us will come back to the school and continue with our program. I don't think so.
Honestly, like every other Nigerians, it's very outrageous. Like I keep telling people, most of us here, we are students and we are fathers. We have children also who are also in school. We have our wives who are also in school. We have our dependents who depend on us for their schooling. So now increasing the school fees to this kind of amount is so outrageous.
I have heard that University of Jos have increased their school fees, and it's not nice at all, because some people are coming here because they cannot afford private university. Are they trying to compare themselves to private universities? Some of us came here because we'll not be able to afford it at all. 200,000 is too much.
The students, however, call on the federal government and the university authority to look into the current economic hardship and review the charges downward.
I'm calling on the relevant authorities to look at us, most especially with the masses, because if you look at the institutions, majority of us are coming from the poorest family. So battling with what we eat now is a problem. Talk more of paying school fees.
And we call on the relevant authorities. If actually the federal government has said that this increment shouldn't hold water, they should monitor, they should set up a monitoring team or committee to go to all these different schools, because they're trying to exploit some students. As our president used to say, that let the poor breathe. Honestly, let us breathe, because there are some poor masses who cannot be able to pay this kind of school fees. If not, we have to go to private universities and school.
For the government to look into it and reduce the price of the school fees, because learning is not only for the rich. Even us that are poor were supposed to learn.
President Bola Tinubu had in his nationwide broadcast on Monday asked higher institutions, especially universities, to avoid arbitrary increment of school fees in order to ensure that students continue with their education. Ado Musa, Trust TV News, Jos.
Let's now join Chiamaka Nwafo for business news.
federal government has said it spent about 7 trillion naira direct interventions in the power sector, despite privatizing the electricity generation and distribution arms of the industry since November 2013. This was disclosed by the Transmission Company of Nigeria at a briefing in Abuja to announce the forthcoming Nigeria Electricity Supply Industry Market Participants and Stakeholders Roundtable. The 7 trillion naira, it explained, did not include interventions from international donors. It said the privatization of the power sector was necessary because of the failure of the defunct Power Holding Company of Nigeria, PHCN, but noted that the industry had not lived up to expectations. Market operator of the federal government-owned Transmission Company of Nigeria, Edmund Eje, said the market had not been able to pay for up to 4,000 megawatts of electricity for more than 2 decades. Fitch Ratings has downgraded the United States long-term foreign currency issuer default rating to AA+ from AAA on Tuesday, pointing to expected fiscal deterioration over the next 3 years. U.S. stock futures opened low after the rating agency issued its downgrade, with Dow futures sliding about 100 points. In May, the agency placed the nation's AAA rating on negative watch, blaming the debt-ceiling fight. The country's recent debt limit feud was mentioned again in the current downgrade. Fitch also highlighted the rising general government deficit, which it anticipates will rise to 6.3% of gross domestic product in 2023 from 3.7% in 2022. The agency also noted that a combination of tightening credit conditions, weakening business investment, and a slowdown in consumption could lead the economy into a mild recession in the fourth quarter of 2023 and first quarter of 2024. The White House, however, disagreed with Fitch's downgrade. And that's it on Business News. I am Chiamaka Nwafo.
Now away from Nigeria, the first military planes carrying mostly European nationals evacuated from Niger landed in Paris and Rome on Wednesday, with France and other countries expected to fly more of their citizens out of the West African country after last week's coup. Niger's democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, and his government were overthrown by members of his presidential guard on July 26 in the 7th military takeover in less than 3 years in West and Central Africa. The recent coups in the region have come amid a wave of rising anti-French sentiment that resulted in the withdrawal of French troops from Mali and Burkina Faso this year and last. And finally, in sports, Nigerian forward Josh Maja has revealed the reason behind his decision to join Sky Bet Championship club West Bromwich Albion. Maja moved to Hawthorns on a 3-year deal on Tuesday. The 24-year-old linked up with the Baggies on a free transfer after severing ties with League One club Girondins Bordeaux at the end of the 2022-2023 season following the expiration of his contract. And with that, we've come to the end of News Hour on Trust TV. Don't forget to follow us across all our social media platforms. I'm Darshan Hussaina Usman. Thanks for watching.
From the Daily Trust News Center, this is the News Hour.